what I found here. It's a bit of wild watercress growing in winter. So this is another thing that you can eat and harvest in winter for survival or for making tasty recipes. What I'm going to do with these, because they make great flavorings, adding to salads and that sort of thing, but I am going to make a family recipe for pierogies. So I'm going to make a cheese, bacon, potato, yellow potato pierogi mixed with watercress. So how you identify watercress is it's always got these sets of leaflets along the stem and then a big fat leaflet at the top. There's also the bitter cress sort of group of wild greens, but they're edible as well, so that grow in this sort of structure that's really fairly easy to identify, I would say. They also like watery, wet sort of soils, stream sides and next to the sides of roads, ditches, that sort of thing. Anywhere where it's quite wet, they grow really, really well. And they're easy to grow in sort of southern coastal BC.
It's really hard to video while chopping watercress. I gotta get my tripod.
I have my oven at 400 degrees for about 15 minutes. And my bacon is nice and crispy and ready to go. So I like crispy bacon for this. I'm gonna take out 4 strips and chop them up and throw them in my pierogies. Here are my 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 potatoes, yellow fleshed, ready to go. So I boiled these the other day, so now they're cold. It's easier to work with as far as making the filling for these pierogies. So I'm going to mash these up with the watercress, some of my cheese, and then diced bacon. Also note that I haven't peeled them because I like potato skins and the way they add flavor to things, and it's less work. You can use a potato ricer, which is a nice, easy way to get your potato to a consistency, or you can mash, either or. So I have my watercress and my riced potatoes. Making pierogies is great for pandemics or when you're in isolation or, you just have nothing better to do. So, yeah, because it's time consuming, right? But still really fun. So I'm gonna add I used Mahone cheddar or Mahone cheese, and I'm using about, let's say, that's about a ½ cup. You can tell what kind of chef I am because I don't really know how much I'm putting in. I'm just putting it in till it looks good. So I grated that up, and then I'm gonna mix that in. And then I'm gonna fry up my bacon and add that as well. Bacon. There you go. That's your 4 pieces of bacon. Listening to Unknown Mortal Orchestra in the background. Mixing up my bacon, and this is ready to go. One thing about store-bought pierogies is that I never see the actual pieces of bacon in it, or rarely. So that's a nice thing. You can add as much bacon to this as you want. The last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add salt to taste. So, just put a little bit of salt in, a few pinches, mix it up, and then you're going to taste. So to make sure that this is what you want. Mix all these ingredients, add more water if you need to. You should have a nice soft wet dough. You can see this is a good texture, and then you're going to throw it into the fridge just to rest for a little bit. It's a lot wetter dough than a pasta dough, so yeah, just use a flour on the counter if it's more wet. This is the shaping process, so you take off little chunks like this, press them down, roll them out, very simple, and make sure they're nice and thin. You don't want a thick pierogi. And then you'll be pinching off the edges when you form them to make sure that's thin as well. Yeah, it's really simple. And yeah, you can roll out a few of these and put them under plastic wrap just to keep them from drying out, so you can have a bit of an assembly line going eventually. Use a tablespoon measure to scoop up your filling and plop it down on your rolled pierogi dough. You want to make sure at first, when you're new to it, use a smaller amount of the filling just so you're not making it too complicated for yourself. But eventually work up to putting the maximum amount of filling in, and that's best for the resulting pierogi. Make sure your hands are clean, dry, and yeah, you're just going to roll that dough over and pinch it on one side. You also don't want any air pockets in your pierogi, so when you press it down, just make sure you're not leaving air pockets that will expand when you boil and maybe break your pierogi. So pinch it down nice and hard. See how I'm doing that? You can go over it twice just to make sure everything's nice and pinched and sealed. And yeah, with your next pierogi, you're going to fill it with more filling than this. This recipe makes enough for about 4 people. So yeah, then you want to boil your pierogies till they float. And then I like frying them up. Some people will just eat them boiled, but fried with onions is the best. That's the smell coming from these. It's just sweet and oniony. And serve with sour cream.